Hello, my name is Nessa McAlane. I'm reading out to you an article today, which is an article I wrote about air quality pollution, and it was published on the 14th of August on the Canterbury Journal. The reason that I'm making a video of this and not an audio file is that you can't put audio files up on YouTube or Facebook, so you're stuck with looking at me, or you can just listen to the audio if you'd prefer. Okay, I'm going to start. The air quality in Canterbury is always good. This is what my smartphone tells me every day. Through an IBM subsidiary called weather.com, the smartphone also gives me a numerical measure, and this is nearly always top of the class with a number 1 in Canterbury, although sometimes it slips to 3 or so. By contrast, when I was in Germany in the spring, readings were usually around about 50, and that was described as medium. But when I do my own research in Canterbury, I get a different answer. The results aren't good. I have one friend who splits her time between here and a village on the coast in Fife, and she breathes well in Scotland, but her asthma often returns within a couple of days when she's back in Canterbury. She's not alone. There's a retired GP called David Pratt who noticed a similar kind of pattern amongst the people he treated back in the 1990s, and he began to speak out publicly about air quality 20 years ago. The reason, he explained to me recently, was that he had become, in quotes, concerned at the demonstrable and recorded deterioration in respiratory function in our asthmatic patients with time as the traffic increased through Canterbury, end of quote. And then I was also speaking recently to a world expert who lives down the road here in Canterbury, Stephen Peckham. He's director of the Centre for Health Services Studies at the University of Kent. Professor Peckham runs 3 air quality monitoring machines on the roadside in our district, and he does not describe our air quality as good, and he's particularly concerned at the effect on younger generations. He told me, and again I quote, "Children are exposed to poor air quality throughout the centre of Canterbury. This means they will have smaller, less effective lungs as adults." End of quote. Let me just tell you a bit about some research from Queen Mary University of London amongst 2,000 8 and 9-year-olds in 4 London boroughs. This has shown that they typically have a, in quotes, loss of 5% in lung capacity, end of quote. Then there's research from California which has found that there are 5 times as many 18-year-olds who have a 20% reduced lung capacity in polluted areas. Okay, so looking at the readings from Professor Peckham's recordings on a particular day, that was Tuesday, August the 6th, I discovered that nitrogen oxide emissions, otherwise known as NOx emissions, hit a maximum of 208 in the St Stephen's area of Canterbury that morning, and that's 5 times the legal level. But the problem is that most people don't know how to understand these readings, which, by the way, measure the presence of these pollutants in millionths. But the Canterbury results are troubling. The government sets an annual average legal threshold at 40. So you break the law if you have it averaging 40 over that time. The problem is that this includes nighttime levels when there's very little traffic, and so when the levels are close to 0. And in fact, research is suggesting that children's lungs are permanently damaged when the levels are 10 or more. Local authorities have a legal duty to respond when NOx levels exceed the government's legal threshold, that figure of 40, but they don't have to take action over particulate matter and low-level ozone. On particulate matter 2.5s, there's no known safe level. The World Health Organization says that there is, in quotes, little evidence to suggest a threshold below which no adverse health effects would be anticipated, end of quote. So the Queen Mary research points to particulate matters alongside NOx and nitrogen dioxide as being a a cause of reduced lung growth. The day that I was looking at these measures on the professor's gadgets, they registered 38 in Canterbury. Okay, and as regards ozone, that affects lung function in higher concentrations, and there's no legal duty on councils to do anything. Canterbury is one of the few UK locations which regularly breaches the UK hourly limit of 180, and this is because we have high levels of sunshine, high levels of traffic, and we're located in a bowl. So daily levels often reach 100, and that can produce symptoms for asthmatics and others who are sensitive. And when I looked, the ozone level on that day was as high as 161. It goes up and down. Canterbury is not alone in Kent. Maidstone's streets are the 5th most polluted outside London, according to Friends of the Earth, who did a survey in February 2019. Poor air quality is a disease of prosperity. We're poisoning ourselves by our emissions, particularly from diesel cars. So we need to make changes. We need more measuring gadgets, particularly by roads, where emissions push up NOx levels. We need this information put out on an app in a format that people can understand, so that we can see which streets to avoid at any one time. We need better public transport at a lower cost to users. We probably need free public travel if we're going to entice people out of their cars. And that would mean a reorganisation of public finance, including the introduction of substantial travel grants from central to local government. If that sounds like the tail wagging the dog, it's not. There's nothing more important, if you think about it, than ensuring that our children grow large, healthy lungs. And finally, we need smartphones that get more accurate information. Air quality stats are not like temperature readings. Temperatures generally remain the same across broad areas, but as meteorologists know, a reading taken in a park for air quality can be very different to that from a bus stop just 100 metres away. In the case of Canterbury, the monitor that IBM is using is in a leafy area up by the old Chaucer Tech, and it also doubles as a police dog training ground. It's just opposite a lovely leafy field called King George's. I went there on Thursday the 8th of August at midday, and the ozone on this measure was put at 40. When I checked what was happening at the same time on the roadside measures run by the professor, I found that the level on Wincheap, which is one of the main roads, was 133. So my smartphone was still telling me that the area in Canterbury was good. It gave it a 2 rating, even though the ozone measure was at a level that was going to do damage to people. So, just to conclude, they say that no one ever got fired for hiring IBM. In this case, whoever does fire IBM should be promoted. Thank you for listening.